Welcome back. Reclaiming Soul Work friends, we are beyond excited to have you join us for this special live episode in honor of Social Work Month.
That's right. We're your hosts, Biani and Sequoia, and today we're gathering in community with fellow spiritual social workers to talk about the lessons we've learned, the realities of practicing in this moment, and how we're showing up for ourselves, our clients, and our communities through our unique roles and specialties.
If you've been rocking with us for a while, you know that our past seasons have centered on unlearning, decolonizing, and divesting from oppressive systems. If you're new here, welcome, friend. Be sure to check out our previous episodes. Now we're shifting a little bit deeper and focusing on what it truly means to sustain ourselves and our work.
This live conversation is all about honoring Social Work Month while uplifting the voices of spiritual social workers who are navigating these wild times, y'all, making meaning and finding ways to integrate healing and justice into their practice. Our goal in this episode is to offer insights, tools, and wisdom that can support you on your own journey, whether you're a seasoned social worker, a healer, someone curious about this work, or just beginning to explore the intersections of spirituality, social work, mental health, and social justice.
Thank you, Biani. I appreciate you. Also, settle in, grab your tea, and get ready for a powerful, real, and deeply needed conversation about what it means to reclaim soul work as spiritual social workers.
Let's get into it, y'all.
Yes, 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 yes.
But before we get there, y'all, make sure you give us a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. By doing so, you'll help amazing folks like you find us. And we really want to continue to grow this community of spiritual therapists, social workers, counselors, and practitioners. And we really, really want to be in community with you. So we can't do that without your support. So if you follow, you subscribe, you bring your friends on, tag them in the comments, do what you need to do to bring folks here and build our community. And if you want to stay connected, sign up for our first quarter moon newsletter, where we share insights a couple times a month on topics that benefit spiritual therapists and social workers. And really, this is about people really dedicated to integrating spirituality into the work while staying committed to serving QT BIPOC folks, folks of color, anybody who's really on the spiritual path. We promise to never spam you. So head over to our website and sign up today. You can go to reclaimingsoulworkpod.com and you can sign up on our landing page.
Thank you so much, Biani, for all of that. Where should we go next?
We got to tell people why we're here. I guess
Yes,
it's time
yes.
for them to know. I mean, we came
Okay.
out of hiding.
I
We've been
know.
in the cut for a couple months, tending to ourselves, taking care of our clients, doing the work we needed to do, and we needed a break.
Yeah, we also did the Witchy Therapist
We
Summit.
did.
That's the
We
other
did.
thing that we did. And that was a lot of fun. So we took a little bit of a break to prepare for that.
We sure did.
And we have some really fun upcoming events, live streams that we think you all will be really excited about. But as it relates to Social Work Month, Biani and I have, for those who don't know, many episodes, quite a few actually, related to the field of social work. And again, for those who may be watching who may not know, Biani and I are both social workers. And so, as mentioned, we have some topics usually that come up during Social Work Month. And this is one as it relates to what's been going on, I guess we could say since last year, March of Social Work Month, and all of the things that we have been talking about over the past year, all of the things that we've seen kind of resurface related to our profession. And we wanted to get together with some of the other practitioners that we've had on our live streams before, and others that, are our social work friends from IG comments and DMs to talk more about what in the world is going on in social work, because I got some questions. I got some questions, and I wonder, do y'all have some questions too? What you think, Bihani?
Oh, I feel like I'm thinking about when we started the podcast. I mean, a lot of, y'all should check out our previous episodes, but I think we've always really been committed to having this conversation about social work and
Mm-hmm.
what what is going on in the
Mm-hmm.
profession, but also,
Mm-hmm.
what does it mean to practice and be a social worker? In the many moments we've been navigating, like before it was COVID, well, before that it was other stuff, right? The first presidency, this next presidency, dealing with a pandemic, dealing with
Mm-hmm.
the climate that we're all navigating,
The
dealing with the genocides,
genocides.
yeah, dealing with
Yep.
kind of like these,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, like local, global, just like how it all like it all impacts the work. And
Definitely.
yeah, just we've been talking amongst ourselves, but we've been really wanting this space to have a real conversation
Yep.
about what what are we doing? What do we do in this moment? What are we gonna do? Um, and what does it mean for spiritual social workers right now? Because I still feel like spiritual social workers, we are people still. I mean, there's not a lot of space made still for spiritual social workers. As much as we've been out here, but there's still this feeling of like us, like what are we doing in this moment? And we really wanted to
Yeah.
center that. Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so we've had many conversations. Like we had an episode on what we wish we knew before we entered the social work profession. We've talked about what does it mean to be a spiritualist in this profession that is often really dominated by like mainstream and Christian supremacy. We've talked about what it means to queer social work and how that's
Mm-hmm.
spiritual. We talked about ancestral practices. I mean, y'all, we got so many episodes.
Yeah. And I
So,
was gonna say,
yeah,
and don't forget the one about social work history and about Jane
yes,
Addams,
yes.
Yes.
So we've
Yeah,
been talking
that's a
about
good
it. We've
one.
been here 3+ years now talking about it. But I think this moment, not many of us have lived in this moment, right?
Yeah.
And like
Yeah.
what it
Yeah.
means in this moment for us in the profession and our work as spiritualists, as social workers, as practitioners. And so, we're really excited to bring in some really dope people that we really admire, um, to have this, like, to, just like be here with us in community. So, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
What we gotta do next before we can bring our friends in?
I'm just so excited to bring them in, but we do gotta. I want to share a little plug. So I want to shout out Sequoia. I know she don't, but you got to give your friends their flowers when they're here, okay, y'all. But Sequoia and her awesome co-founder and co-director pretty much started this dope collective called the Safer Movements Collective, and they're really committed to building safer movements by providing spaces that center healing, wellness, mutual aid, and political education for organizers. And this work is critical, y'all, because there are not a lot of healing spaces for organizers, unfortunately, and they're doing the work. Um, we're really excited, and I wanted to shout them out because they created and put out their new zine on conflict. And it's really dope, y'all. You need to follow them on IG, Safer Movement Collectives, Safer Movements Co., and hit up their website, safermovementscollective.org, so you can learn more about the zine. And really, it's time for us to really be truly in relationship to conflict in a way that centers healing and justice. So shout out to you, Sequoia, and shout out to Zara, and shout out to Safer Movements. That's my plug. Go check out the
Thank
website,
you.
y'all.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Yeah, I would love to get into the guests now, if that's okay.
Yay.
Okay, cool. So we are going to ask for folks to come in and introduce themselves. And so, if everyone that is watching in the chat, if you could let us know maybe where you are tuning in from, if you are a spiritual practitioner yourself, if you're a social worker, a psychologist, um, LMFT, like please let us know like what your specialty is in the chat, maybe what state you're from, and we're going to get into hearing more, a little bit more about the folks that we have here. Now, this is one thing that we did not talk about. How is everybody going to introduce themselves? How are we going to go around? What say you?
I
We
don't
can,
ever mind jumping in first now.
yes, go
Thank
ahead.
you.
Because, because listen, I don't have nothing, no one to like follow up, right? So, like, I don't have to be like, oh, she was so good. Now I got to, no, let me just go ahead
Right.
and get it out the way. Good evening. Um, everyone, and greetings because people can be watching this at a different time of day. My name is Melissa Eiffel, but I'm also known as Ia Onisoyi. I am a licensed clinical social worker currently residing in the state of Georgia. However, I am a New Yorker through and through. I was raised in New York, child of the diaspora, born in the Caribbean, Guyana to be specific. I was gonna bring up my natal chart because I was like, I wanna, but I'm a Pisces stellium. I got Pisces in 4 houses, so I'm watered down, 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 and a priest of Oshun. So I am watered down, 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 down. I practice in the Lukumi tradition, which is a spiritual tradition that comes out of Cuba, but it is rooted in a West African spiritual system called Ifa. And I am so happy to be here, as a part of this conversation. So, yeah, thank you.
Don't be shy, y'all. Hop in.
Hey everyone, I'm so excited to be here. It's so good to see the new faces and then see you again, Sequoia and Biani. I missed you too. My name is Nat, they, them. I am a licensed clinical social worker. What am I? I'm a psychic medium. I'm currently residing in Central California on Yokut's land, aka Fresno. Yeah, and I'm really excited to be here. I am a Leo sun, Cancer rising, Virgo moon.
I mean, I'll go next. Maria Elena Perez, she, her, ella pronouns, and I am in New York City, Lenape land, and what else do I want to say about myself? So I have a social work background. I've been in the reproductive justice movement. I feel like that was my political home and where I grew up. And then life threw me in for a spin and went down a really, I feel like, intense dark night of the soul, intense healing journey and reclamation of like, you know, my magic, my ancestral strengths, gifts. And yeah, I think right now I'm in this place of like melding it all together. I do also organizational consulting and I'm an EFT practitioner. Um, and I am a Scorpio sun, Cancer rising, Capricorn moon, and I'm watching Housewives of Atlanta these days.
You're not the only one watching, okay? You're not the only one.
Hey, I can go next. My name is Azul, they, them. I am currently in Kumea land, San Diego. I am from a border town in between Arizona and Sonora, Mexico. I used to be a therapist. I'm still somewhat in the field. I do part-time work at a hospice. I am more actively working as a desk worker, somatic practitioner, channeler, medium, and I'm very excited to be here. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Michelle Jaquish. I use she, her pronouns. I'm based in Seattle, Federal Way, Washington, the Pacific Northwest. And my big three are I'm a Capricorn sun, so my birthday was a couple months ago. A Gemini moon, that's why I'm a social worker, and a Scorpio rising. And I mean, I'm a social worker. I've been a social worker for almost 8 years now, wearing many different hats as we all do. One of them being therapist, one of them being like a tarot reader slash tarot therapist. I've done consulting work. I've taught at my alma mater quite a few times in our social work program. And I am started watching The Residents last night. Huge fan of Shondaland, love her. And it's pretty interesting.
Thank you, y'all. I love that we're like everywhere. Everybody's all over. I just love it. So we're gonna get right into it. I want to offer the first question. And anybody can share here, but how do you all see this like spirituality and the political as interconnected? How do y'all see those connections? How does it seem connected to y'all? Would love to hear from y'all.
I think that's a dope question, because I think a lot of times as spiritualists, there are some of us who want to act like we're not on Earth, right? Like it would be nice to just be up in the ethers, astroplaning from timeline to timeline and not have to deal with earthly things. But the reality of it is, and my spiritual practice, we believe that we chose to come Earthside, and we chose to come Earthside during this time, and everything that we engage with and that we have to deal with in this human body impacts us throughout our mind, body, and spirit, right? And so when we talk about spirituality, spirituality isn't just religion, right? Spirituality is a way of living. It's a way of, seeing the world, which involves your politics. It involves your sense of self. And so when we're looking at this particular moment in time and this particular political landscape, I think two things show up for me because there's so much attack on personal identity and there's so much attack on being able to even vocalize and to verbalize your own perspective on personal identity. We can't escape how that informs and invades the psyche and the sense of self, right? And so spirituality isn't just a way to deal with that or to manage that. It is also a way to cope with it, but a perspective on how to address it. I know in our tradition, we get something called a reading of the year, where they look at, depending on, what system you're looking at, but they tell you about the upcoming year. And one of the things in the divination for the year for the Lukumi system in January that was said was that, we done made some mistakes. And I don't know if y'all cuss here, like, I don't know, but you don't care, but it's fuck around and find out time, right?
Oh.
So essentially it's like, oh, you want to act like you don't have decisions to make. Oh, you want to act like you can opt out. You want to act like there aren't consequences for the choices that you make as humans. Y'all about to enter into a fuck around and find out season. And so we in fuck around and find out season. So I think that it all goes together. Yeah.
Anyone else? Please feel free, y'all.
Yeah, I feel like for me, and I love this question, I don't see them as separate, right? Spirituality and your politic. I just reflect on my own journey and work back to spirituality, being someone who was raised like in the born again Christian community, and sort of what was erased or buried or silenced, and how like finding my way back, like I'm so grateful for it, but the journey it took to get there, and also like what was taken like from my grandparents and my parents and how their lens and how they view things. So it's like I can't ignore that process of remembering. You know, it's like the whole reason we have to remember in the first place. So for me, I don't see it as separate.
I'm glad you said that because I don't see them as separate either. I always see them as connected. And for me, spirituality, or at least for me, tarot has been helpful in making sure that I'm grounded in like the bigger picture. Because I feel like with everything going on in the world right now, there are moments where I'm getting lost in the chaos, lost in the sauce a little bit. And tarot, like, when I draw a card, I'm just like, oh, okay, that's my purpose. Or like, this is why I'm doing what I'm doing. Cause there are moments that I've had and with this administration where I'm like, I don't even know what I'm doing anymore. Does it even matter? And I mean, that's relative and a subjective answer and rhetorical question, but like, spirituality gives me back to my why, a lot.
I saw some head nods. I wasn't sure if anybody else wanted to add.
Yeah. I mean, I think for me, the same, I feel like, I co-sign a lot of what's been said. And I think, I feel like as a person that I grew up Catholic and then kind of was just like trying to find my way spiritually for some time. And it wasn't until like I was literally physically broken, or however I went through my own process and having to like reclaim like spirituality in a different way, connect with my ancestors, and like started to get messages, started to see all the like power in that. That's when I really started to feel a coming home, and I feel like, and a wholeness that I think was um that was missing, right? I felt like I was always searching for this thing, and I feel like when I finally found it and finally found that anchor within my ancestors and being able to call on them and to be able to like connect with them in real ways and get messages and see visions and see all these things and like reconnect to that part of me as a little girl that I was like a little brujita and like seeing things and kind of just like, I don't know, should I tell people about this, that I have dreams and then they come true, like all this stuff, right? And this kind of reclamation, I feel like I'm in this space now where I'm just like, okay, this is what I needed to be able to sustain myself through the political work that I was doing, that I felt like where I didn't have that peace for a long time. And I felt like because I didn't have that grounding, that anchoring, I burnt out. I feel like there was a lot of burnout. There was a lot of like overexertion, a lot of just like exhaustion. And I think now I'm in this place of like, being able to really like bring the two together in a way that, I hadn't before. Like, I feel like I was operating in a way of like, I'm doing this work here and it's just kind of here. And even though I felt like I was bringing my whole self to it, I still felt like there was a piece of that missing. And it was a spirituality piece that I was searching for a really long time. Um, and now within that wholeness, I feel like I'm just like, okay, I could come back to this and I feel like it all makes sense for me. And yeah, so I think like I think it's so important with, and I think like when you look at our ancestors and you look at, how they operated spiritually and like within political struggle and how it was all connected and um, thinking about even spirituality as resistance and all those things and all those examples, right? And even within Catholicism where there were, some folks that, were activists and kind of just like it was always connected, right? And I feel like that was when I started to like learn more about even like Catholicism and some of the folks within that. I was like, oh, okay, this has been always a part of our history. This doesn't get separated. But even within Catholicism, right, I was like, this doesn't still feel right for me. Um, and so I think now this like reclamation, now I feel like this coming home, and yeah, I feel like it all really connects. It was like the puzzle pieces all kind of like came together for me.
I wish I
I oh,
could
go
just,
ahead, yeah.
yeah, like spirituality as activism and as resistance it's I love that statement and sentence because so many of us have talked about having to reclaim our traditions. And I really just think about the suppression and the oppression of like information now, and and the policing, right? So suppression and oppression is one thing, but I think that we're also going through a time of tremendous policing, and so the desire to silence, and so the ability to use spirituality as a declaration of the self, right? But also because of indigenous traditional systems and the unique ways in which they're set up and they operate their communities within themselves, right? They can be, and so that's a huge tool for activism, but also that ashe and that activating of the magic within, as a way of really feeling empowered is a whole nother lane that I don't think that we actually utilize enough, right? Like we can't escape the challenges of human, right? Like we're human. But I also don't know that we actively tap in. I think we check out more than we tap into being able to use our spiritual practices to empower us in a way that is tangible and actualizing Earthside. Just wanted to throw that out
Yeah,
there.
no, and that's exactly what I'm talking about. Like in terms of like where I am, right? Just like feeling like I was, tapping out and now being able to like really like tap that in. And I think you put that so like that was well articulated.
Yeah, I mean, we know that so much of this system, living in this system, is about us tapping out and disconnecting
Hmm.
to our power and to our sacred practices and spirituality. And so, yeah, it's really nice to hear y'all sort of be in relationship to reclamation and remembrance, which is
Mm.
so radical but deeply a part of our spiritual practices. Um, I wanted to ask the next question, and maybe this is tied into what we bring in, and maybe
Mhm.
what do you think about the social work profession? Like, what do y'all think our profession needs to be doing to maybe discuss, disrupt, or challenge what's happening, and even in the relationship to like what we've just been saying about spirituality as resistance, as activism, or should the profession not be doing anything? I'm curious about what y'all think about that. And Asul, I know you didn't get to go yet, so I'm wondering if you wanted to go first, just making space for like, your voice, if you want to start the conversation, or wherever you'd
Yes.
like. Yeah.
Thank you. I can start. I think I want to answer this from my desk worker background. And just like, yeah, seeing how death is political, the way people die, the way people get or don't get support in their last days. Um, yeah, just centering that. Let me read the question again.
I also felt that. I just want you to know, I think some of
Yeah.
us, I really felt that in my spirit.
Hmm.
Like
Yeah,
how
yeah,
like how
like
we honor the death, like death, like the fact that we
yes,
don't, right? Like there's something here.
right, right. And as somebody whose ancestors experienced genocide and then witnessing the multiple genocides happening right now, I don't feel like there's that much conversation about it in general, right? Like it's by design that we're afraid to talk about death and to center death. So I feel like there needs to be more space made for it, whether it's people supporting people through their grief, or just facilitating conversations about it. I feel like as a spiritual person, as somebody who holds space for others, I don't know if others feel the same, but I feel like we're in an era or a time where we're kind of putting to death like all the oppressive systems and holding space for the birth of the world with collective liberation that we want to be a part of. So I feel like I I see that. I feel like in my circles because like I connect with death workers, but in the general scheme of things, like talking to like a random person, like I don't feel like there's that much conversation about it. So making more space for that is what I feel. would be beneficial in this moment.
I'm so
One of the
glad you.
things,
Go ahead.
sorry, Michelle.
No, sorry.
Go ahead.
Um, I'm so glad you brought up grief as something that's I'm experiencing personally just right now. And having to actually take a step back from parts of my profession and lean into community care. I honestly think that's where the social work profession should probably be heading is like therapists, all of us, we're holding a lot for people, maybe a little too much. And we need to be encouraging folks to have more than just us be the vessel and the container for all the grief that we're experiencing because it's like health wise that's not enough, like that's too much for one person to hold.
I love this talk about grief and grieving. I think I'm, of the mind that you can't love something and not critique it, right? And so as somebody who loves the profession of social work, I have a love-hate relationship with the profession of social work for that very reason, because I feel it's still a system, right? And it is an institutional system and it's set up in a lot of ways in a hierarchical way that in and of itself, how it functions for us as professionals in it is still oppressive. Them fees, them tests, you know what I'm saying? It's still an oppressive system and it is not a welcoming system for all. And I, you know, feel very strongly that the profession and those of us who function within it could do more than uphold the oppressive ways of it, right? I think that the the ethics, one of the things that, let me just say it bluntly, one of the things that like really concerns me is that we are a profession where on paper our ethics tells us that like we're supposed to be inclusive, we're supposed to encourage self-determination with the individuals that we work with, right? We're supposed to be talking about issues related to identity and marginalization, but yet we're living in a time where our government is saying that if you censor those things, then you're at risk of not being able to receive any funding, not being able to actually support people. And so then where are we able to really go and stretch as a profession? I'm very clear in the work that I do, whether it's the coaching work that I do, the spiritual work that I do, or the therapy work that I do, that I work with Black women, period, end of story. And so what does that look like for me? Like, do I now have to somehow, make that implied and not explicit? Do I have to not be clear about that now? Like, what does it look like for me to, as a professional and someone with, over 20 years experience, know what it's going to take to serve and to care for the people who are under my charge and who trust me, and then be in fear of what that looks like and not know that the organization that is an umbrella organization for my profession will actually support me. I don't think that the organizations that, I don't think the NASW does a great job of making us feel safe and protected and nurtured and cared for, and like they're going to advocate for us. And so I just feel like as the individuals working within the profession, we have to be brave. And this is a time for courage and to be in community with each other, because I don't see overarching organizations that seek to support us, to encourage us to continue to, serve people who desire, like who need us, who need us. And that's a lot of, grief work. That's a lot of self-reflection. That's a lot of breaking up of the things that do harm. And
I just wanted to pop in and add from the previous question that we asked about how the spiritual is political, how spirituality and politics are interconnected, and then this piece here. One of the things that I personally have navigated is, compartmentalization, right? So only being in spaces where only certain aspects of my identity, myself, are accepted. And with this question about what does a social work profession, what do we need them to do? One of the things that has been healing for me has been to be whole, right? To not to show up whole and really center integration and embodiment. And then to your point, yeah, on Yi about the social work profession and values and that disconnect, right? It's a time to really center integration to me and embodiment, and this courage, right? This piece, like that's where those kind of aspects, values, intentions meet for me. And so, yeah, I would love to see more opportunities where we can talk about values, talk about challenges. And for those that are watching, if you stay tuned throughout the whole episode, you'll hear more about an offering that Biani and I will have coming up related to integration and embodiment.
Yeah, I really resonate with the love-hate relationship with the profession. Like I definitely entered social work more as a means to an end, right? Like I was just kind of like, these are the kind of jobs I want. I want to work in community. I feel like I need to get an MSW to get paid, right? It was just like literally that kind of like mentality when I first went in, because I'm like, oh, I know I could do that job, but they're gonna want an MSW, right? And so that speaks to like the professionalization of like the knowledge that we already have and all of that. So I feel like that's where I'm just like, screw it all, right? Like let's just burn it all down. Like, why do we need to have this profession? Um, like I went to Hunter here in New York City and there's a community organizing track. I'm like, y'all, we could just have people in the community that they're already, natural organizers in the community. Why do we need to have a whole track on like folks, for the most part, white folks coming into our communities to organize them? So it was just like things like that I just found, really problematic. And so I think like for me, it's like there's this piece of me that's just like burn the whole thing down, right? But I'm like, oh, but if it's gonna exist, right? Like, I think that we need to, like the harm reduction, kind of way of it, in the short term. Like, what can we do? Because I think that there needs to be more centering of the knowledge and the wisdom that already exists within communities, but not in a way where we're also co-opting it, professionalizing it, trying to put something on, like even with like we talk about the evidence-based stuff and it's like what is evidence-based? And I know that's a hot topic or whatever, but like it's like, when we look at some of the tools and some of the practices and sometimes, they're co-opted from our ancestral like lineage and stuff like that, and all of a sudden now they're like become these evidence-based things, but like our our wisdom isn't right considered evidence-based or whatever. And so I think like there's a part of me that's like, yes, we want to center community wisdom, we want to center all of that, but like also, I don't want it to be taken from the community either, right? And I think that's like I don't want it to completely leave from there. And so I think about just even how accessible social work education is, like y'all think about it. It's like 2 days of school, 3 days of like field work, or whatever. Field work, like even the language we're still using, it's just like we're out having to do these internships and these placements for 3 days. Like, who can really afford to do that? You know, like I went straight from undergrad because I knew that I was going to be able, I had no income, so I was still going to be able to tap into some scholarships. Like I was really strategic about that. Because I was like, if I go out and start working, how the hell am I going to stop and then go back into school? Like you look around and you're like, how are people surviving to be able to go through these programs to then come out on the other side and not be making right a lot of money, going into this, into the profession. And so it's just like one of those things where I always saw like folks from the community, like, and people that were already doing the work in like the 1-year residency program, right? It was the folks that were just already in placements and they were able to just go to school at night. And so thinking about even just that, like how are we even making this accessible to folks? And if that's going to be like, the requirement for certain, jobs and certain pathways. And I'm not talking about, I guess, like clinical social work, because I do think that there is a certain kind of training that comes with like being a therapist and all of that. But even then, right, like there's still some um indigenous ways of knowing and platicas and all these different things that are just like um just like part of like our culture and all of that, and yet and how people still like are in community, like look at doulas and doulas being professionalized and all these things, these sort of, and it's like how accompaniment has been such a part of our tradition and our history and our lineage, in different ways. So I don't know. Like I said, I have a love hate. I feel like there's not enough somatic. That's another piece. I don't feel like there's enough like somatic, like and really tending to the body within social work. I think like for me that came later on, and it was like, damn, all we do is just talk, and it's like, where's the embodiment? Where's that piece of it? I feel like that's left out of social work education too. But yeah, I don't know. That's my soapbox. I'm still trying to figure it out.
Yeah, thank you. Does somebody else want to like answer this before we move on to the next one? Next question.
Yeah, I just said a quick comment resonating with like the love and hate. I just feel like as the profession, I don't want them to put out another statement or another like CEU diversity training. I think the most disruptive thing they could do is to be like, we lied. We lied. We didn't actually mean that we cared about you or that we like wanted to embrace and embody these values. We lied, or we did a shitty job and maybe we want to do better. I feel like until an apology happens, like I'm not really interested in the next sort of hot button like political thing that they put out a general statement about. I mean, if we look at like any sort of like relationships that can withstand and like be considered healthy, like you have to know how to apologize. Like knowing how to say you're sorry is spiritual, So I'm not interested in them doing anything unless they're ready to like say we fucked up or we need to do better.
I was trying to write that down. Knowing how to say you're sorry is spiritual. And I really resonate with the accountability, right? That it's sort of like no more performance, no more statements, accountability for real. So before we move into hot topics, because, really excited about that too, can y'all share with us, anybody want to share like specific practices or experiences that you do that embody the spiritual as political, like things that our listeners and viewers can really, kind of hear a little bit more about what spirituality as political looks like for each of you, if you want to share. I feel like some of you already shared, but like if you want to share any more, that'd be great.
For me, it's any type of movement, especially in nature. Anything that gets me to be in the present moment and basically just enjoy my life, feel joy and pleasure, because I feel like that's also a form of resistance, especially with everything going on right in the world, or the abuse or the oppression, anything that reminds me of how good it feels to be alive. And I feel like through death work, I'm reminded of that all the time, working with people who are close to dying. So that like I have to move, I have to go to nature in order to be able to do this work and just survive right now in general. So movement, it can be as simple as connecting to my breath. Sometimes I do like a dance session, something more elaborate, but any type of movement is what is helping me right now.
I think going deep into community, I guess I'm outing myself every time I talk, but one of the things that I don't subscribe to is that the individuals that work with me in a therapy setting or in the coaching setting need to be separate from each other. I think that we, come together in different forms, intensives, immersives, collective conversations. I have an online teaching. We talk about spiritual things. We talk about the impact of the day to day, on the physical body, on the spirit, on the mind. I introduce them to each other, which is also like, no, you know what I mean? Like, oh my God, your clients should never meet and, be in relationship. But, watching them develop relationships and be in community with each other in a way that allows them to have a different, for some people, they have never had healing, healthy relationships with other women. Some people have never had healthy relationships with people who look like them, right? Like in particular, Black women, right? Depending on the environment that they were raised in, depending on the work environment that you may be in, you may spend your whole day with people who don't look like you, who don't sound like you, who don't understand you. And so it's incredibly healing to be able to give access to that. And I consider it to be a political statement to be like, fuck your rules. Like this is what the people who work with me need. And we're going to come together and we're going to be in Jamaica doing a mushroom retreat. And we're going to be, right? Like I'm going to give them access to things that are healing. And I'm going to stop telling them, like we're not going to call it this name. This is sound healing. We're not going to call it this, it's that, right? Like we're going to be honest about what these things are. And yes, you can learn Reiki and do it for yourself, right? So like all of these things are very clear statements that I make around the individual's right to have autonomy and to be in community and to have shared experience as a part of their healing. That doesn't just have to come from me as someone who's supposed to be the facilitator of that healing. And so for me, that's a very clear statement that I make.
For me, lately with family, remembering my foods of my culture have been really great in working through grief and many emotions coming up for my family right now. And some of my favorite dishes that my family have made are like stews. And the best part, even though like the veggies and the meat are great and the rice is great, is the sauce. Is that like we call it sabaw in Tagalog, and like when I take a sip of that stew sabaw, like it feels like home. Like my soul is there. Like it's our version of like that soul healing. Um, so my foods, going back to my foods of my culture.
I love that. Anyone else want to share a specific practice or experience?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, like it's just like connecting with spirit, connecting with ancestors. I think, I was just kind of, doing it on my own, communing and like praying. And then I learned about like the Akashic records and how to reading. And then after that, started like actually using the records to be able to like, I guess, get more direct messages, get more direct, like the more direct line of communication. And so that has been something that grounds me. Because I think that, it also helps me to just kind of like even, I guess, sometimes confirm the intuition. Sometimes, I'm doubting myself, doubting the intuition and doubting some of the things that I'm getting. And I'm like, is that a message? I just like, because especially when you're just like out in nature or out, and then you get the download and you're like, wait, was that, and sometimes I just then go into the records and just like, all right, I just need to understand this. Is this a sign? And so I think just being able to then get those confirmations um there. So I think that's definitely, and I feel like when I go to the beach is my thing. When I go into the ocean and I touch the ocean, it's like I feel like like I'm just like one with everything. Like it's like this moment of complete, my nervous system just automatically just like, down regulates. Like it's just like regulates. It's like I feel like I'm connected to ancestors. I feel like I'm connected to spirit. Like I just feel like everything in that moment just like alive, and so I feel like that's to me like, and I'm in New York City, so it's not like I could get to, and I'm like very picky about my beaches too. I'm just like, it's not going to be the Jersey Shore, I need to be in the Caribbean beach, like the warm water, like all of that. Like it just can't be. So I always like try to get, down to Puerto Rico or DR, or and just be able to like be on like my folks' lands and the water there. And I think that always just like brings me back.
I appreciate y'all sharing. I'm actually thinking about, and we are going to move on to hot topics, but I'm thinking about Iya Onyi's question around what does it mean for us to do this work now and like in the present, and how do we move, doing this work? How do we like still serve our community in this moment? And that's just staying with me. I don't have anything more to say outside of like that's really resonating for me. And yeah, I don't have an answer. Like, and it's not for an individual to answer, but I think it's for us as a community to answer it. But maybe we'll get to it through these hot topics. We are going to shift to hot topics just in the interest of time, and like, yeah, like Maria Elena was saying earlier, let's move into like evidence-based practice, which for me, I have a love-hate relationship with it as well as social work, the term itself. And, part of why this feels like a hot topic is because we've said it, right? Like we see it all the time. Like we see it in our profession, how now what's considered evidence-based practice are really stolen from African and indigenous traditions, stolen. And I use that word really intentionally. And I'm wondering what y'all think about that. What do y'all think about that in our profession? What do you think about it in general as a topic? What do you make of that? What does it mean for us as spiritual practitioners, spiritualists? That now what's considered evidence-based really came from like our lineages in a lot of ways still, and not given credit for it. And I don't know if we need credit. Maybe I'm where Nat is around like own it, own what you're doing, but wondering what y'all think.
Yeah, I mean, like, we have evidence. Like, it's not a question of like, oh, we're doing readings or we're connecting with, is it real? Is it not? I'm like so bored with that of like, we don't know, it's like, can we just move on? We have plenty of evidence. We don't have like the right evidence, I don't know. Oh, I forgot to answer this earlier. Has anyone listened to the telepathy tapes, that podcast yet?
Yes.
Okay, so I really enjoy it, and they're shooting a documentary about it. But I'm like, isn't that evidence enough? And so I made the mistake of like going online and looking at their social media, and people are like, this is fake. This is fake science. Like people go so hard to protect I don't know, like a truth that just really scares them. Excuse me, protect a lens that like shuts out a truth that's really scary, right? So I don't know if and I use the term evidence based when I'm like talking about these things and critiquing it, but I'm almost like maybe we need a different term because we have evidence, and it implies that we don't, but we have it. So I don't know. That's my thing.
I
I
really
love how
love that. Oh, no, go ahead.
just one quick thing, like I really love how you said that because my first question of that was like, what do we mean by evidence? Like in under white supremacy, we mean numbers, data, graphs, like someone graduates, whatever, someone's healed. But like we don't like that's evidence under white supremacy. Like, is can someone being connected to community, is that evidence? Maybe you can't prove it, but they are connected. Like, yeah, anyway, that's my thing.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. Whenever I speak about evidence-based practices with the people that I serve, one of the things that I'm always talking about is, does it work for you? Right? Like I'm always asking the question: does it work for you? Is it helpful to you? Do you need to know it to help 99 other people? Like, is it working for you? And that's all that we need to go by is the evidence of the body, right? Like this idea of placebo effect is interesting to me because did it work for you? Did the sugar pill work? Like I just want to know if you feel better. I just want to know if you woke up today and you were able to have a conversation with self, if the anxiety was gone. Like that's all that really matters to me. And so this notion of having someone else to validate our personal experiences and the things that we know to be true within our body, I think it's another piece around disembodiment, right? You know, personal disconnection. And, you know, just the minimizing. You know, it's interesting when I hear people talk about new age, these new age practices, and just like there's nothing more new age than Western science, right? There's nothing more new age than that. These are ancient traditions and they're spiritual sciences. That's the way that because there's centuries and centuries of evidence that support that they work. When I look at EMDR, when I look at brain spotting, when I look at, you know, even what we've come to label as somatic practices, and the fact that, and this is no shade to anybody who has invested in spending time to study these things. I am EMDR trained as well. But when I look at the evidence, right, that is used to substantiate, you know, bilateral stimulation, it's what we do in dance. It's what we do in drumming. It's a part of what we learn when we're learning to be spiritualists and to embody spirit and to remember from our history, right? It's a part, like this learning is learning that is given and gifted in community, that is given and gifted, you know, when you have elders you can sit at the foot of, right? But we don't have that. And so in absence of that, you're paying oftentimes, you know, someone who is not indigenous to the origination of the practice, who, you know, took it, studied how it works in the physical body, leaves out the spiritual body, and then sells it back to you so that you can prove that the things that, you know, work that have worked ancestrally are valid in a Western, in a white supremacist context, and heavily annoyed by it. I was, you know, in a business cohort, like an accountability group, and like one of my colleagues came in and she was like, "Oh, I heard about this new thing. I forgot even what it's called." But when I was like, "Oh, what this cannot be," and when I researched it, it was some white man who was repurposing sound healing, like literally took all of these sounds, put them in a thing, was going to teach a course, then have you pay monthly to gain access to like all of these sounds that were healing to the nervous system. I was like, "Sis, that's sound healing. Like, we're not paying him for a cachet of indigenous sounds. Like, we're not doing that. This is not." And she was like, "What's sound healing?" But it's because like we're not given access to that in school. Right. And so what if we were given access to that as a part of our formal education, so that even if people did come along and say, "Okay, well, now we can understand, we have this other teaching which adds in this other information so that it can be fully integrated as opposed to a complete dismissal of the ancestral practice," which is what we have when we don't know our history, right? When we don't have the information about what is indigenous to the cells in our body and like what's germane to our joy. And so, as you could tell, I'm passionate about this subject. I could go on and on, but that's how this base practices.
Thank you. I love that. I'm really grateful.
Yeah, and I
It's
feel like then it's like
yeah.
also like just like part of the machine almost, like, right? And the system where it's like then you need evidence-based practice to be able to get the insurance to cover it, then to get this, right? And it's like part of this like blah, 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 you know, and then even when something you don't want to even make it evidence-based practice, but then it's like the incentive is there now, because now in order for you to get payment, now in order for you to get reimbursement, now in order for you to get all this stuff, now you have to, do the
And the
studies. Like,
truth is, insurance ain't even paying you more to do it that way, right? You
yeah.
get the same reimbursement rate. It's like
Yeah.
you're not right. So what if I just did what I know to be true and just, didn't necessarily have to spell it out in the EMDR note, right? Because we have the same benefit. Because they didn't increase my reimbursement rate when I accept insurance because I have this new certification. You still have to haggle for that. Sorry,
Yep.
not to cut you off, but
No, no,
just, yeah.
no, no, no. I'm with you. I'm with you there, and that's also why it's like, like the same thing with the love-hate relationship with EFT, which I'm just like, I love EFT because I feel like it's something that's so accessible, but it's rooted in traditional Chinese medicine. It's just like literally like tapping on acupressure points that have been there for, like people talk, like they've had for like thousands and thousands of years. And some white dude just came around and was like, oh, I'm gonna, tap on these points and create a shortcut, and then I'm gonna call it this thing, right? And then it's like I'm gonna add the cognitive piece, and it's just like, so that's also my piece. When I always talk about EFT, I always talk about the origins and say like literally got co-opted, and like it's really rooted in tradition. People never talk about that. It's just like, oh, EFT, and we're doing these points, and it's like, it's the acupressure points. You know what I'm saying? Like it's like those are the same points.
But you know what? You just kind of highlighted something for me there too. How we how this also becomes disjointed for people who were rooted in additional spiritual practice is one of the things that I'm very mindful of when I'm talking about EMDR and brain spotting with the individuals that I work with that have spiritual giftings, is how going into an EMDR session or a brain spotting session, or like even an EFT session or a sound healing session, can be triggering to the spirits that are walking with you. And so what does that look like? So if there's not even a conversation around that, there's no real tangible access point for people who have spiritual giftings or who function from a spiritual perspective to be fully immersed even in the world in which we work when we're working under these systems, because there's a language that is not being spoken, that is not being interwoven into it, right? Because once again, yeah. I could go
Yeah,
on.
no,
really?
I totally, and I'm with you, because there was actually I remember once where I started doing acupuncture, and it was opening up my channels in all kinds of ways, and no one talked to me about like the kind of protection maybe I needed to have going into my sessions, and I was getting spiritually attacked. Like I was just like, yo, I'm feeling dark forces in here. I'm feeling, and it was like, oh, okay, and it was like I started actually fearing going to my acupuncture sessions for a while, because they were just like opening me up in all these ways, and I started just like like being too open, and like it was like making me more vulnerable. But yeah, and no one talked to me about it, right? And then I was able to talk to an elder who was like, oh no, this is what you got to do when you go in there. This is how you protect yourself and protect your energy. And I was like, shit, like I don't know that. Like I was just going on there like, I'm gonna just get my acupuncture. Like it's gonna be great.
But I think what you're all saying is true. It's a product of what we're seeing, right? Of cultural appropriation, colonization. Like what happens when this work is being taken way out of context, and like, but actually it moves me to my next question, or like my next hot take. If this was like kind of burning your biscuits, a Sequoia's term, I love it. This one might burn your biscuits too. I've been really struggling with this sort of white folks teaching people about ancestral wisdom practices. And I've actually been seeing them in listservs, like other people of color promoting white people that can teach you how to connect with your ancestors. And I'm wondering, I think it's interesting because I think what I really struggle with is that ancestral practices are ancient or have existed for a very long time, right? But now that white folks are talking about it, it feels like there's this like commodity, this course, this whole kind of thing that we've been doing forever, ever. And so I'm wondering, like, what do y'all think about that? and like white spiritual practitioners teaching ancestral practices and teachings. And yeah, what do y'all think about that?
I
Yeah.
feel like it's very mind blowing for me how it kind of went like full circle, how indigenous people were persecuted for playing their drums, speaking their language, practicing their culture, right? And like it was white people who did that, and now they're the ones going back to it, to the point where even people of color are learning from them
Yes.
and receiving services from them. It's like how did we get there? How did we get there? And going back kind of to like the question we were talking about earlier, yeah, like as a somatic practitioner, just seeing how one of the people who do the trainings, who's one of the most famous, Peter Levine, he's a white man, right? And he's teaching people how to connect to the body. And it's like, yeah, it's movement, it's things that have existed already, and it's like now we're just paying them for them to either learn from them to be certified, or as somebody who's seeking healing, now going to them and sometimes not even knowing that it's an ancestral teaching, because I feel like the way they talk about it too, it feels like, oh, this is just general healing, and it's like, no, it comes from specific lineages. And as somebody who's Mexican and reconnecting to my indigenous tribe is not that known, is Yaqui from the state of Sonora. But I know that there's other tribes in Mexico who, like, I know that there's a question about cacao, right? Like everybody just thinks like, oh yeah, that's just like in general, like this pan-indigenous thing, right? Like, oh, it's just general. Like anybody who's a person of color, anybody who needs this healing can access it and should be able to teach it. And that's not the case. Like, I would be so pissed off if like just anybody went and tried to like sell my specific culture from my tribe. So it really frustrates me when I see that happen to any other culture. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm half white, so let me speak for all white people right now. I would like to see white practitioners specifically working with other white people and like white people's relationship to their own ancestry and spirituality. I think it gets very problematic when, as we're saying, you're marketing to anyone, and I can teach anyone this, right? I want to see, if you're like a white practitioner, like what's your relationship like to your own lineages and their practices and knowings, and like, are you offering it to your own community? I think it kind of always goes back to that for me.
And just to piggyback on that, because that opens up a gate for me. I don't think I have to tell nobody where I stand on it. I'm kind of clear. But I would want to see, what is your relationship to the behaviors of your ancestors as well, right? So, you want to come teach me about an indigenous practice. Are you speaking out against oppression, against the murder of the bodies of people of color, of what's happening with regard to incarceration, genocide? Like, what are we doing about embodied whiteness? Because this is also, for me, I don't believe all kinfolk are kinfolk either. So whenever I'm engaging in my own practices, and whenever I'm in a place where I'm introducing a practice or a practitioner of a practice to the people that I work with, the women that I work with in particular, I'm very mindful of like vetting and like having conversations. And if I know you, and if I know you to be integral, because whiteness is an embodied politic, really, and mindset that anybody can have. And so it's important for me to understand how you move. And I'm grateful that the people who I choose to do that, this kind of work with, understand. I, recently took some clients. We went to Jamaica for a psilocybin retreat, and the individuals I was going to work with, their lead facilitator is typically a white woman. And I was like, that's just not, I can't, and the owners of the company are to Black people, man and woman, and so they were very gracious, kind, to be like, we understand. And they sought out a lead facilitator that was a Black woman, native to Jamaica, and studied with different tribes when it comes to the medicine, so that she was able to engage. And I'm grateful, because when you're having these experiences, healing for people of color is a spiritual experience. And when you're engaging in deep spiritual practice, when your ancestors show up, you don't know how they're going to show up. Several of the participants found themselves in the hull of slave ships. And so could you imagine finding yourself in a psychedelic experience in the hull of a slave ship and looking up, and the person who wants to support you is a white person? That is just, to me, could be so damaging. And I don't think that that's something that's discussed enough when we talk about safety. So I feel like it's not something I would do. However, if I'm working, when I'm working with people who are considering it, we talk about the ins and the outs of it from the perspective of, okay, how do you know that they're safe? And quite frankly, as a woman, it's pretty much the same conversation that we have to have around men that we choose to work with as well. And, other women that we choose to work with as well. But we just have to go a little deeper, because the truth is our bodies have a remembering and a knowing of whiteness. And it's not always friendly, it is not welcoming, and it doesn't always feel safe. And so we do have to make sure that we're doing that work. But I despise it, quite frankly. It's not something that I think by doing that and not acknowledging where it's coming from, you are embodying white supremacy. And that, to me, is a huge red flag wrapped around your whole work. So.
I completely agree with that. I just wanted to add that in addition to Biani and I seeing these posts where Black practitioners specifically are sharing white practitioners that are teaching ancestral workshops, offerings to other Black practitioners. One of the other and I'm gonna just name drop this particular workshop was along the
Sequoia,
lines of yes.
I just want
Mhm.
Maria Elena is leaving, so I just want to say bye to Maria
Thank
before we
you. No, I'm
continue.
sorry. I didn't want
Yeah,
to interrupt y'all, but
no
yeah, I
worries. Take care.
have a toddler to put down and is starting to like
It's all
cough a
good. Thank
lot.
you so much for
So
being here. Yeah,
thank y'all.
take care. All right. Sorry, Sequoia. Okay.
Um,
You were name
you
dropping the
know that
train.
I'm an elder millennial,
You were
so
name dropping the training.
Oh, the
Name
the
dropping.
training. The
memory.
training.
Okay, so whiteness,
Before they
in
were white.
addition to sharing the white practitioners workshop, the other one that I saw that was very unsettling was before we were white. And so, speaking to your point, Ia on Yi, about checking in about the behaviors, of these folks, spiritual bypassing, is to me a symptom of this. There's this going around, this bypassing clearly of certain things. And so, yeah, this before we were white workshop, I was like, mm-mm, no, not before.
Well,
Not
you know what?
before.
I would be interested to see, because whiteness is a very interesting thing for groups and communities, that for immigrant communities. And I even know when I'm thinking about my own Caribbean community, once again, I'm in it, so I can dissect it, right? I can talk about it. But when it comes to Black immigrants who come from Caribbean countries feeling as though they're different and better than Black Americans, that's a form of embodied whiteness as well. And what I'm learning is that there are other communities that have sort of been folded into whiteness, right, by virtue of skin color. But in terms of culture, it's not like it's a very interesting thing that has happened in many different countries, and so I just wanted to like put a note there about that. Yeah, just want to put a note there.
Thank you. I feel like I wish we could be here a little longer, but we don't have a lot of time together. I don't know where we should go. So I think we might shift gears a little bit, and we want to sort of make space for like the ethics of like businesses, like what it means for us as spiritual practitioners. And what do y'all think about the sort of hot topic debates around spiritual therapists or practitioners and money? I know that there's a lot of debates about whether we should be charging even for services or doing this work, in relationship to money. Like, what do y'all think about that?
I feel like
I
I wish. Oh, sorry.
I struggle with it because I think, especially as like a BIPOC spiritual practitioner, you should charge. Like that is labor you're putting into your products. Like charge something. And like when I've like asked about like money and like products and like social media spaces with other therapists, they're like, "Oh, you should offer that for free so they can sign up for your newsletter." I was like, "Are you serious? Like, do you know how much time I spent on that product?" And you're like, "Oh yeah, you offer it for free." And I'm like, "No." Like I would like to be charged. I would like to be paid for my labor, please.
I was gonna say that I wish we were like already back in a society where we could just like trade and survive based on being, people who support others. We're not quite there yet. But yeah, I feel like it's very personal the way you share your value and the way you accept value and exchange. Because that's the way I see it. You're putting out value and you're accepting some form of value. And sometimes for me, it's okay for it to be in the form of money. Sometimes it's okay for it to be in exchange for a review, in exchange for a trade. But that's a very personal thing. And I don't feel like it should be like a one size fits all, like, oh, you're a good practitioner, you're a bad practitioner for if you do this or if you don't do this. I know that there have been moments where I feel very okay with having free offerings and that feels very aligned. I don't feel like it's unbalanced. And there's other times where that kind of expires and it starts to feel like, oh, actually I need to be poured into more in other ways. Yeah. So yeah, I wish we were there. I see where those people are coming from because that's how it used to be before. We're not there anymore. We're in a capitalistic society. And I feel like even then we can find ways to be resourced and to be abundant, and to offer our offerings in ways that feel aligned to us.
Yeah.
No, go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, I feel like I'm a supervisor, and when I work with people who are in school or like new to their private practice, I always prioritize talking about money, because not only are we bringing our own sort of like money wounds to the work, depending on how we grew up. I don't know if you all experienced this, but in grad school, I was constantly told by like professors or admin who are like upper middle class and wealthy white women, like, well, you didn't join the field for the money, right? Like, you didn't do this for the money, which is like an added layer of bullshit we really have to look at and unpack.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is labor. Like, spiritual work is labor, it's psychic labor, mental health care. It is draining, and like, we're not doing good work for our community if we're not caring for ourselves, if we're not able to invest in our own health, in our community's health, right? So I get a little annoyed when there's kind of this, because I think this lens of like we should do things for free is kind of cloaked in like, and that's what it means to be anti-oppressive. And like, if you're decolonizing your work, then you should work for free. And I'm like, how do we arrive here? So yeah, we should be paid well. And it's like my fees are high because not everyone pays that high fee. Okay. So it's like I'm also trying to create sustainable ways where, like, yeah, not everyone can afford 275 a session. I understand that, right? And for the people who can't, like, they have another option, you know? So
That's what I was gonna say as well. I recognize that my fees are typically on the higher end of the spectrum when it comes to therapy services. And I know that the experiences that I create, the fee, the investment attached to it is typically on the higher end of the monetary spectrum as well. And that's also because when people are in community with me, if they happen to fall on difficult times, that allows me to have the bandwidth to be able to support them, right, in a different way. Or if there are other people that come into sphere of community with me and they have a need, I can provide pro bono services to them as well. And so, and quite frankly, because I'm a spiritual social worker, because I'm a spiritualist, there is more attached to the work that I do. You're not just coming into a room with me and I'm listening to you and I'm nodding my head and taking notes and telling you to go. Some people do that, right? And that is a form of therapy. That is not me, right? And so, I have things in my psychic aura at the end of the day that I need to clean off, right? It pulls from my physical health, it pulls from my emotional well-being, it pulls on me in a different way. And because there's that additional layer of labor, one of the ways that I do protect myself is with regard to the fee that I charge, which Spirit keeps on telling me really isn't high enough, right, for the work that I do. I keep being told I have to charge more, charge more, charge more. And that's a conversation we be in, me and Spirit. But so, this idea that, our work means less, it's one, I don't think people understand what all it entails to prepare and to clean and to keep yourself healthy. But I also think that there is a valuing of the work that we do because we are mostly women. We are mostly, especially those of us who engage in the spiritual side of this work, we are mostly women of color. And so I think that there is this, underpinning of that we should be mothering, nurturing, helpful for free, because there is that, underlying messaging and belief system there as well.
Thank you, y'all. Appreciate y'all insights around this. And it's nice to hear everybody's perspective is so different, and I think that's really important. Yeah, it's just like it's a different person. Everybody's perspective is helpful and like also different because our relationship to money and what it means to navigate the system is varied. I feel like the conversation about money brings up a lot for me too, because I find that my white colleagues are like charging these exorbitant rates. And then when it comes to like me, it's like, whoa, that's too, like, why would you charge? Like there's a lot gets projected onto practitioners of color, has been my experience when it comes to money stuff. And so I appreciate this conversation. All right, y'all. I want to say more, but I also want to acknowledge we are at time and we're going to move into like takeaways. So I'll share a little bit about my takeaways from today's episode and feel free to share as well. And for those who are watching us or who are watching the recording, please let us know in the comments what your takeaways are at this time. I'm really grateful for the fuck around and find out era that we're in. That's really staying with me. Thinking about how we honor death. I really appreciate that invitation. That really did something to my soul as like a baby death worker. And the value of like community, like true community work, true community care. That is some of the takeaways. So many, but these are some of the takeaways for me. Maybe I'll turn it over to Sequoia for a bit, and then we'd love to hear from the rest of the guests. If you have any takeaways, Sequoia.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, I had to unmute really quickly. First of all, thank you all so much for being here with us. especially just during this extended time. Thank you to everyone that is watching us. Thanks to everyone that has sent comments. And for those that haven't, please know that maybe the next time you catch us live, you'll comment and say, "Hey, how you doing? We would love to hear from you." Um, my main takeaway tonight has just been really a reinvigoration around being a spiritual social worker right now. Prior to y'all coming on, and this is a little bit of some of the sentiment that you shared, Michelle, at some point as we were talking. Um, it just feels really hard in certain spaces and environments right now. I feel like the therapy landscape has shifted, quite a bit just with what are these, the apps and all of the things, and how the internet has been weaponized, related to therapist information online, and all of those things. um and yeah, like tonight has just been really helpful in the sense of knowing that there are other folks out there, like you all, that are experiencing some of these same things, talking about some of these same things, wanting clarity, wanting to be in community with other people around it as well. And so the main takeaway is that for anybody listening out there, if this conversation resonated and you're feeling like, what to do next, definitely keep tuning into the Reclaiming Soul Work podcast and let us know how you doing with some of this stuff.
All right, my friends. Anybody want to share their own main takeaways from today?
I'll go. I also really appreciated the grief work and the death work comment. That resonated so heavy with me. I do a lot of work with people around their ego and the need to be aware of the needs of the ego and what aspects of the ego get to be integrated and cared for and die essentially, right? And so I don't think that I've considered that one statement that you made really brought into my awareness the need to add in something around death work and grief work to support that work, because so much of what keeps us stuck is the fact that we're so preoccupied with life and living and existing and things staying as they are. And so to be able to move forward, we do need to appreciate that there's a new time upon us, and that requires some grief work and some death work. And so I thank you. I thank you very much for that.
The takeaways for me is like a reminder of empowerment, of the wisdom that we come from, the knowing, the practices that we hold, and like an invitation for me to like zoom out of these systems. Like, we're not just whatever roles we call ourselves. Like, we are nature, we're from the stars, we're from our ancestors, we're from the divine. And even if it feels very like closed off sometimes when we navigate through these oppressive systems, it's like they're very new too. They're not more than 500 years old compared to the existence of the world and the humankind in general. Like, this is newer, and we have knowledge and wisdom that is way older and more powerful than this. So yeah, like an invitation to remember that power.
I'm taking away the comment around there's nothing more new age than Western science. Like that really stuck with me. I was like, the next time some other white practitioner or privileged person argues with me about these practices, I'm gonna use that. And again, similar to what Biani and both Sequoia have been saying, just like that there's more of us out here, and I want us to keep knowing and talking and connecting with each other.
Yeah, I think also thinking about Asula comment around death is really sitting with me. And also, I'm just feeling really grateful to have this conversation and be in this space. I'm not in a lot of spaces with other spiritual social workers and therapists, so it feels really good. Um, yeah, just being here. So thank you.
Yeah, I feel very fed. Like I feel fed and nourished. Um, I don't want to say goodbye, but we are at that place, and I want to make sure that those who are watching us and engaging with us, like, know where they can find y'all and follow y'all. So, like, please let folks know where they can find you and follow you. Share your offerings and services so that they can keep an eye out for it. Um, please let us know where they can stay connected to you too.
You can find me on as Mariposa Healing. It's spelled MARIPOSX Healing. Basically everywhere. And my website is mariposahealing.com. I have somatic support offerings, grief support. I'm also an Akashic Records practitioner, so I do that. I do channeling, different offerings, individual. And I also have my Patreon called Virtual Support Space, where we meet 2 times a month and we do guided meditation and somatic support sessions. So I have individual and group offerings as well. Thank you. Oh, thank you for sharing it. Yes.
You can find me, I'm most often on Instagram at Melissa Eiffel, LCSW. The website that I love to send people to the most is reflectingjoy.com. So it's reflecting, REFLECTING hyphen joy, JOY.com. It is my wellness coaching community. So I have an online coaching community as well, where we have there's a whole library of teachings, meditations, classes that I've done over the years with them. I think we're up to probably like 50, 50 offerings in the library. In addition, we've been meeting for the past 2.5 months every other Saturday to do morning yoga. We have collective conversations quarterly. We do intensives and we do immersions together. And in 2025, I'm resuming live in-person activities as well. Beginning in May, I will start a 6-month cohort called the Inner Shift to support people in, really understanding what is getting in their way of true, deeper, healing work. It's for those of you who have done the healing work, child, but you still keep getting stuck. You're running into walls. And so the Inner Shift will begin in May. And April 25th here in Atlanta, I'll be celebrating my 4 years as a priest of Oshun with a community-based offering, which will be some movement, sound healing, and a conversation about what does it mean to turn ashes into gold and to really honor the sweetness and the challenges that we have in life. And so all of that can be found at Instagram. The links are in my bio, or at reflectingjoy.com. So, thank you. Thank you for having me. And it's an honor to meet you, ladies, this evening. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. My website is sunshadowhealing.com, and same on Instagram at sunshadowhealing. That's where you can find my private practice. I do mediumship sessions as well as coaching and consultation for spiritual therapists. I'm also starting a new group in May 17th, called Palma Spirit Group. And that is a place for us to come together and learn a little bit more about the history of the mental health field, how it has co-opted and sort of erased indigenous healing technologies, how spirituality, is taken out, and then how can we come together and remember and engage in practices and rituals that help us, that connect us, that empower us to show up more authentically in our professional lives. So yeah, thank you all. It was really nice having this conversation today.
My therapy practice is called Banshee Therapy Services. So you can find that on a Google search. On Instagram, I'm Banshee_therapy. And I'm not taking therapy clients right now, but always down to do tarot readings. And I want to make a quick plug for an org I actually do the majority work in. It's called TransWA. We serve trans and gender expansive community in Washington State. Happy Trans Day of Visibility. And it's transwa.com, transwa.com, and there's a lot of really great ways to get involved and keep our work going in the midst of this chaotic administration.
Can you repeat it again, Michelle? Sorry, I was trying to, please spell it out.
transwa.com is the website. Transwa is the name of the org.
Thank you, y'all. And I also wanted to just clarify that we are made up of gender expansive folks here, not just women and femmes. And so we're really glad about that. I just wanted to make that clear.
My deepest apologies.
No, that's okay. That's okay. And I just wanted to clarify that because I don't think we did. So I just wanted to say that. And also, thank you, y'all. Thank you so much for sharing your offerings. And I hope that people can really reach out for your services. And I'm gonna just I hope, okay, yeah, we can see everybody's. We'll also make sure we have it on the episode notes too, but thank you so much. And I'm gonna pass it back to Sequoia to close this out.
Thank you all. Yeah, thank you all so much for, again, letting us know what you have going on. Last thing that we want to say to folks that are tuning in to us is to definitely follow us on Instagram. Biani has been doing some amazing things on our Instagram. And so, yeah, if y'all are looking for just grounding, fun, insightful, humorous social media, definitely check us out. One of the other things that we want to make sure that you have information about with following us on Instagram is our upcoming events, live streams, ways to stay connected. But specifically, we want to invite you all to save the date for an upcoming workshop that Biani and I are putting together called Resisting the Woo Woo, Ethical Considerations for Psychotherapy. That's going to be June 8th, which is a Sunday from 2 to 4 p.m. Eastern. And in this workshop, we're going to be talking a little bit more about spiritual bypassing during the Witchy Therapist Summit that I mentioned at the top of the episode. We had gotten into, I think, a really good discussion about spiritual bypassing and cultural appropriation. And so we are expanding that and would love for y'all to join us for this transformative workshop where we critically examine the ethical complexities of integrating spirituality into psychotherapy. We'll explore the risks of uncritical spiritual practice, unpack deeply rooted supremacist tendencies, and discuss how to engage with spiritual tools like divination ethically and responsibly. Thank you all so much for being with us today. Let's keep this conversation going. Please make sure that y'all share your thoughts or questions in the comment section. We'd love to hear from you. In addition, we'll continue to bring you amazing guests who share their experiences with the intersections of spirituality, social justice, and mental health, and offer their wisdom, tools, and insights. You definitely want to stay in the loop, friends.
Thank you so much for being in community with us and supporting a heart-centered podcast. I don't know if you hear it, but it's pouring down where I'm at. Feels like a sign of good things to come. But we are a heart-centered podcast made up of two queer Black femme healers and spiritual social workers who explore the intersection of magic, spirituality, mental health, and everything in between, y'all. Stay connected. Follow our channel on YouTube. Make sure you're subscribing. You'll get reminders for notifications of upcoming offerings we have. And sign up to our landing page so that you can check out our upcoming workshop in June and our free monthly newsletter, First Quarter Moon, as well. And yeah, let's keep this conversation going in our channel. Love to hear from y'all. And everybody have a great rest of your day. Thank you so much to the panelists for being here. We're so grateful to each of you. And y'all take care.
Thank you too. Bye bye.